Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Planet Zoo Arcadia. Today we have some big things to do. We've got 2 more buildings left to finish off in the central district of Old Town, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So we've got quite a few new shops and stuff to add in. You will also notice throughout this video I have earmarked an area for a habitat within Old Town that is going to contain hopefully one of the new animals that are coming with the next DLC launch. It'll either be raccoons or foxes or one of the other new animals that we have in. I'm really excited to bring them into Arcadia because I think they're going to fit in perfectly, and the animal that I'm looking forward to most is going to be the fox, the red fox. It's one that I've been wanting to bring in a long time. For a number of reasons that I'll probably explain when I finally do put them in. The only issue is the habitat is a little bit small at only about 280 meters squared, and it may not give us enough of a traversable area for our new animals. So I have considered that this is a habitat for some turtles or something, just anything that has a small footprint. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive into our speed build and I will explain more as we build along. So we are starting with our sweet shop. Now, I really like the idea of having like an old style sweet shop, and I'm looking forward to creating it. And I think I came up with some pretty good ideas. First of all, I'm going to start using custom signage. Now, I know there's some great fonts out there and everything, and I really like them, but I find them a little bit difficult to maneuver, and I don't always get the effect that I'm looking for. So, because I'm average at Photoshop, I think I'm going to make some custom signs that I'm going to then spread across a number of different TV screens to create one long, lovely sign within our zoo. And I'm really looking forward to kind of getting creative outside of the game to actually then bring something really cool into it, which is why you're now starting to see a lot of blank signs popping up here that are just a lot of screens tied together. Now, if you've seen any of my older franchise mode series, you'll see we did this in Saltwell Safari Park in our reptile house, where we created a nice background of like snakeskin all the way across our signage area in that zoo. And I'm looking to do something very similar here. And if you want to know how to do this, I will gladly do a little tutorial on it, but I'm pretty sure there's loads of them out there. But basically what I'd be doing is, you already have in Planet Zoo, you can put in the templates, and that will allow you to see how many pixels you need on your canvas to actually create a sign within this. And all I'll be doing is taking the height map and leaving that as it is, because we aren't going any higher in this sign in particular, and then expanding the width all the way across, and then exporting my images as like 5 or 6 separate ones. Then you will just load them in individually into those panels to create your new sign. Something that I've really enjoyed playing around with, and I'm very, very lucky to have those sort of skills on hand anyway. Back to the build. So I wanted this to look a little bit more bricky and have like a couple of different features in it comparatively with our other space. So using these shutters was a really nice idea to give the effect that there's a window behind here, and obviously we want to make sure that we're colouring these to the theme of our sweet shop, which is going to be a nice pale blue. I think that'd be really nice. And then we're going to put a couple of like candy stripe designs in the background as well, so you get that really nice fun look about it. And I think I came up with a really nice looking lighting fixture for this as well. Obviously I've not seen it dark yet, so who knows what it's going to look like, but I was really happy with how this one turned out, and it was a nice way to get back into the kind of creative process within Old Town and creating some custom planters here just by bringing up this small cast iron planter and then putting some Arctic wood trims around it to create a little window box here that goes all the way down to the ground. Now obviously there's some weird little gaps and stuff that I don't really like, but next week when we get to episode 10 in the series, which is our first milestone, I will be doing the fine detailing within here, and we will also be adding a brand new habitat from the Twilight Pack, hopefully. And that kind of led me to get thinking about other ways that we can change the zoo around, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them after I've spoken a bit more about the build here. So we're adjusting the colours in our plaster here, and originally what I wanted to do was create some candy stripes with some more plaster. Now you may be able to see the problem here. That plaster goes right through my vendor, and this is one of the pitfalls with building in this small sort of like footprint that we've got. I ended up having to use the metal bars here and just colouring them differently, which looks okay up close, but when I zoom out, the colour changes totally, so it creates a weird visual effect that I don't particularly like. Obviously, there's a lot of different materials I could replace this with, but I was pretty happy with how it looked. You got that nice candy stripe effect, and I did put in some lighting here, and then a little slice of inspiration hit me, and I decided to change how it's going to light underneath this signage and where the actual doorway that would be the entrance to the sweet shop is. And that involves using the bauble lights. You can see I'm still playing around here, but eventually I abandoned that idea, and here we go with these baubles. Now originally I thought I'm just going to build this up here, and then my idea changed a little bit, and I thought, right, okay, I want to hide it all behind glass and make it look like this is kind of filled with sweets and stuff. So we can bring our glass out and then start putting the baubles on top of it. And we just created like a random pattern here that it made it look like there was little gobstoppers hidden behind this, and these will all light up. And we just need to make sure they've got a nice pale glow to them. We don't want them to be too like out there, especially because there's lots of lighting in here. And then these North African plaster decals that are swirly look like kind of like little like jelly or, you know, licorice laces and stuff. So we put them in and coloured them, and then brought them back in to create this really cool looking sweetie like structure, which I think is just a really fun little way to signify what this is. Obviously we're going to have that lovely long sign on the top of it there as well, but I just thought this was a nice little signifier that separates it from the rest of the buildings in Old Town. I then always wanted to use these are from the European pack, they're like the tops of a tent. So I coloured them all yellow, and then we're going to put the signs for these shops on top of that like tent roof. And this was a little bit tricky. You can see there's a texture like malfunction there where the two of them are crossing over. Unfortunately, I couldn't actually maneuver that so it was invisible, which is where I had the idea to actually put the signs on top, because they draw the eye away from that imperfection where the two of them join. So you can see here we're putting our Looney Balloons sign on top of that actual texture. And then the Gulpy Energy will go on the other side there, right next to it. And you spend too much time looking at the signs, you don't notice that line in between the two pieces. Put in some windows with some darker trims, and then we were ready to move on to our next phase of development. So you're seeing little snippets here today because there was a lot going on, and this took me a long time to kind of come up with the idea for how we were going to differentiate these buildings, and then to actually execute them and put them into practice, as well as making sure that we were managing our budget. You can see like a little bit of time has passed in the zoo. I have been doing a little bit of management, and we did get into a little bit of an issue, which I will talk about in my next episode. I don't want to talk about like things that have kind of threatened the integrity of this zoo, but yeah, we're managing okay now, and we've got a nice little bit of breeding programming going on anyway. So we are working on our pharmacy now, and this one was a fun like process. I did have a couple of ideas for this, and not all of them worked. Some of them haven't actually made the cut for the video, and actually I've only shown the bit that did work. This sign, I really like it, but it looks a bit too cartoony for me, so I'll probably put a custom one in next episode, and I'll talk again about what I've done and what I've designed out of the actual game. So we're going to again put in another TV screen set here, and then another one going on the other angle. And the idea I wanted to have, this was like an old vintage pharmacy. So if you've ever been at any kind of museums, that like Beamish Museum up where I live has a really cool old pharmacy with lots of old like cure-alls and stuff, which it's just really cool. And it has this wonderful sign all the way across it that's kind of like, I can't remember what it is, like JD and Sons Pharmaceuticals or something like that, and it's really nice. So what they have in their main shop window is just loads of old bottles and like medicine packets and things like that, and I thought about using a large screen and just adding an image of an actual old pharmacy window into it. And it was a little bit of a frustrating kind of process. I couldn't find something that didn't look too big, and then that like the stark contrast of a real image in this zoo just didn't work for me. Like when I'm doing stuff like this, I really want to kind of buy into the graphical nature of Planet Zoo, so you'd have to kind of look for something that was a little bit more cartoony, and that's really difficult to find. So I thought we'd just create something using the build pieces that we've got, and thankfully we have some bottles from the, I believe it's the India pack, and we'll be using them to create our window full of bottles and like a couple of cabinets and stuff that just give you a little glimpse of the inside of this building. I'm not looking to create full interiors here because there's not really a great point in doing that. You just want something that will just catch the eye as a guest walks past, or as we're like sweeping the camera through, and then you get that little idea and that little flash of inspiration. We're all about kind of creating a tool for you to use your imagination. It's kind of like a book. So you will see something that's happening in this zoo and you will go, oh, I can picture what the inside of that building looks like. I don't need to show you these things, so I don't need to create them. I want you to imagine what the interiors of these buildings look like, because in reality, they're an absolute mess. So we have this nice little seating area where somebody could come upstairs and just sit and gaze out onto the zoo with a couple of boxes just stacked up, just for extra little bits of fluff. We then moved our cosmic cow sign because this is where I wanted to put in my pharmaceutical bottles and stuff. So that went round the corner, and then we create our shop window here. So we're using these bottles. It's a real shame that we can't actually colour these bottles, but never mind, that's not too much of an issue. It then gets hidden behind a couple of extra layers, so it's not too much of a distraction, and you won't look at it and go, oh, they're all the same bottles, just repeated over and over again. Obviously, there will be like custom stuff out that people have brought in, little props and stuff, but I feel like there's enough within the base game for us to create what we are looking to make here. So we once again brought in these shutter doors, and I just changed the colours of them so they stood out a little bit from the actual back wall of the pharmacy here. And then we sunk that entire piece back into place. I wanted it to be like a darker colour, and then we have the green walls of the insides of the pharmacy, which I did change the colour of and then change them back. Then it was just a case of putting a flooring in, because you can actually see the grass underneath, and I wanted to just cover that up. So there we go. As we sweep the camera past, you just see what's going on inside that building, and it's just that tiny little nod. And we did the same with our bookshop. Now, of all of the builds that I've done for this episode, the bookshop's probably the one that I feel is a little bit more disappointing than the rest of them. I feel like there's more I could do here, but when I actually worked out the layout of this one, it didn't work. So I've had to work within that layout that I've made myself, and it made it quite difficult. So our doorway here is like on either side of it, there's going to be two windows where we have shelves of books stacked up, and I ended up using these ceramic tiles, which were really cool because we've changed the colours of them. They don't actually stick through into the exhibits on either side, which is a problem. We have exhibits on either side of this corridor going to the main entrance to the bookshop, so it was very difficult to use pieces that had more than just like a 2D texture to them. So we have to create an illusion that these books are stacked on shelves in this window but set back, but we don't have a lot of space to actually set them all back. So that was quite difficult. I think we pulled it off, and because once again we're just making these little nods to kind of show you that this is a bookshop or this is a pharmacy, it's not too much of a worry, and I felt quite happy with it by the end of it. I would like to have them set back a little bit more, but the more I pull those windows forward, the less of a corridor we have going to the bookshop, and it's already quite small. I was really happy with it though, and it was nice to create like an extra little awning there that kind of sticks out into the main corridors of Old Town, and it was quite, I was proud of it, even though we were working in quite a difficult kind of circumstance. Anyway, moving on, we were fleshing out our doorway here, and it was just a case of moving our Arctic wood beams into position. There are a ton of Arctic wood beams being used here. I can't stress enough how many different, I think if I went through it, there's probably a load hidden in there that I can actually get rid of because they don't stick out here at all. So yeah, but piece count doesn't matter. It doesn't make much of a difference. I thought it did in the past, but it doesn't make too much of a difference to it. It's actually the guests and rendering their emotions and how they're reacting that causes a lot more CP load than your builds themselves. So if you are watching any of the older videos, you will know that I've said that in the past, and it turns out that it's not true. And we have some of the other big creators to thank for coming to that discovery. I can't remember if it was Rudy or Leaf who'd mentioned it in a video, but they do have a whole video on that explaining why piece count no longer matters. So I wanted to make this a little bit different again by using some of these European wood textures. They are usually for the sides of a bridge, I think. but I quite like them in here, and we've already used these at the Old Town train station, so it was nice to bring them back and continue that kind of format that makes you think that the train station and actual Old Town itself have had some sort of historical link. Then we put in a couple of trims and stuff just to give that little bit of a pop so that it stands out against all of the other buildings, because the bookshop doesn't have a lot to it. I did want to do a big sign here to make up for the fact that it looks a little bit bare bones, so we're going to have something up here. Maybe we will advertise a book called You, Me and Other Animals or something, and it's somebody's magnum opus and their greatest work, and you can buy it right here in this bookshop. Or maybe we'll do a history of Old Town or something. Give me some book titles and I'll make up a couple of like weird covers or something and then we can put that on there. And it was just about putting in a couple of windows here to finish this one off. Now, you will notice if you're comparing this to the last video, a lot of the fine detailing in these builds has been left out, and that's because I want to do that next episode. So what we're going to be doing next time is a lot of the fine detailing on these buildings and in the cobbled streets of Old Town, as well as making our brand new habitat. And that's all we're going to be doing that week, because it's been a pretty heavy couple of weeks for this one, and I'm really pleased with it though, so it's been work worth doing. And I wanted to make sure that I had this all tied up by the end of episode 10, because I want to go and do something a little bit new in the zoo. Maybe going back to the entrance and designing our little caravan park, or potentially doing something around the actual outside of Old Town, where I'm going to talk now about the ideas that I have. I'd thought about moving my European fallow deer out to the outskirts of Old Town on the opposite side of the river and making a little boat tour that goes all the way around that. And that would involve adjusting the bridges a little bit and then making a few like height differences so that the actual boats can get under the bridges and do a full tour all the way around Old Town, which I think would be really nice, because they're going to be able to see the Kowalski's horses in Old Town, then they'll see fallow deer on the outskirts. And the idea for the outer part, the outer ring of Old Town, is to have it as like farmland or ranch land and stuff, and that's where we can start bringing in some of the big grazing animals like the bison, or again the fallow deer, and any other animals that I think might fit in there. So we are doing our Photoshop now, in case you hadn't already guessed. The Just a Memento is the perfect shop to have in our photography shop, and I made a weird little camera out of the shapes. It's not amazing, but you can tell that it's a camera, and I just thought it was a cool little addition that really helps it stand out. And it was just about making sure that this is different enough. Now, this was a really small footprint, but I'm really quite happy with how it turned out, especially having that Just a Memento right next door to it in the old camera shop. It seemed like a really good idea. And I'd thought about how we were going to make a nice awning for this, and then it hit me that there are a couple of pieces that I've always wanted to use and never have. So obviously we've got the bunting, but I've used that a lot. But I really, really like this African... I think it's from the North African pack, this awning. I think it looks so nice and so vibrant, but the colours on it match perfectly with the theme of this Photoshop, so it seemed like a perfect fit. The other thing I wanted to do though was create a window behind this, and this is where things got a little bit difficult. So first things first, I needed to put in this window-like piece. We then pulled that wooden beam forward a little bit and removed the plaster. Then we put in some emissive window panels. Now these are going to create a warm glow during the nighttime, which makes it look like something's going on inside that building. The only problem is we have square pieces and a round awning that I need to cover up. So this is where we got tricky with our plaster, and it was about making sure that everything fit so that we could cover up the emissive window panels on the outside without interfering with what was going on underneath that awning. I had to move some plaster around and then fit it all into space, and it actually really works. So it was a little bit of like tweaking, but we got it, and I'm really pleased with that one. Moving into our antiques shop, and again I had similar ideas for this using the big TV screens and just using an actual real life picture, but it didn't pan out. The antique shop obviously would have a lot of high value items in, so I wanted to create a security gate, and these New World leaves arches work really well to do that without needing to do too much messing around. And and I really like that. And once again, we pulled them over to this side and then just put a pane of glass behind those arch pieces. I don't know why they are arch pieces, but they're actually the part that goes up before you get the arch being created. So they are the supports for the arches. And we put a pane of glass behind it so it looks like there's a window with this security gate on it. Very similar to some of the other windows that we've got in Old Town, but I wanted to make these a little bit more vibrant and extravagant because obviously there's a lot of high value items in here. You can see we have another couple of signs here that I'm going to create, and I'll probably do all of these in advance of our next episode so that they're in place for when you come to watch it, and we'll be flying around Old Town, and as we're making those final adjustments, you'll get to see those signs before we do our tour of Old Town. Another thing that is missing is the pawnbrokers. Somebody did suggest that, and I think that's a fantastic idea, and it is happening. It's just not in this central district of Old Town. It's going to be where the actual staff building is, near the deer, and we've got some toilets in there as well. So I'm going to make that my pawnbroker, because that building is quite large and it doesn't have a great deal of decor on it, so that's how that's going to be finished off. The next thing I wanted to do with our antique shop, because there's not a lot that's like nodding to it, so very much like we did with the pharmacy and the bookshop, we're going to create some window dressings. But for now I want to focus on my greengrocer, because before I can do those windows I want to make sure that the footprint for the greengrocer isn't going to interfere too much with it. So creating our doorway here, we're just once again moving some wooden beams around and getting everything into position, and then we're going to create like an outdoor fruit and veg stand for this greengrocer. So people would come here, they'd collect their fruit and stuff, and they'd go into the shop and pay for it. Near where I live, on one of my high streets, there's actually a really cool one that does this. So they have all of their fruit and veg out on the street, and you can just kind of browse around and have a look, and it's really eye-catching. So when you're walking past, because it's quite an old traditional shop, you don't always notice these sort of things. So having these really colourful fruits and vegetables right outside on the street, it really draws your eye in, and that was something that I wanted to create here, and I think it looks really cool. Using these plastic buckets to like form the basis of our shelves meant that I didn't end up having to spend any time building like a little framework for it. We fit the framework into the plastic buckets that were already in place, and then we just put the fruit and veg in these buckets, and I think it looks really cool. So people would pick these things up, they'd go into the shop where it would then be weighed, and they'd pay their money and then leave, and I just think that's a really nice little idea. So we were putting all of the fruits and vegetables that were available to us in the game into these buckets. I had a little bit of a problem with apples because they seem to spread out forever, but we did angle them so that they kind of disappear into the baskets, and that worked perfectly. Then it was about putting in some watermelons, obviously all of the new fruits and veggies that we've got with the conservation pack that came out recently, and it was just making sure that they fit in nicely and they were like all randomized so that they'd kind of just be dropped in there, and people have maybe rifled through it and picked out the best looking ones, or the but yeah, I really like this sort of intricate detailing, and I know I've already said that we haven't done it all yet because we're going to be finishing off next week, but doing these little things just gives me a little bit of gives you a taste of what's to come, and puts me in the right frame of mind for moving forward with it. A lot of the stuff that we've got left to do is actually just like residual frameworking stuff, like making the walls look a little bit less bare, but the actual detail has been done. It's just those finer adjustments that we need to make on the exterior buildings to really finish them off. And I've felt really inspired doing this one. It's not been, the last couple of series that I've done have kind of just fallen a little bit flat. And every time I log in now to do an episode on this, I feel like really excited to do it. And I just look forward to doing it so much. So I really want to thank you all again for the support that we've had for actually doing this series, because it's been so much fun to do. And I'm really pleased that so many people are enjoying it and like engaging with it. So that's something that's been really, really appreciated by myself. And then our antiques windows are coming in now. So we're going to put in a load of old pots and things. We just needed to make sure that the shelves that we had there were thick enough. So we're doing it here, and then we're going to sink it in and put a window over it. And we just need to make sure that there's enough spacing in here so that when we put it into the building itself, there's nothing kind of sticking out or like interfering with any other parts of the building. And because we've got such a large footprint on the interior of this that we aren't using at all, it makes these like exterior like fascias look really nice. And just playing around with like 3 dimensions and stuff and adding layers and layers going back into the building itself, it just makes it look a lot more unique, when actually what this all started out as was 4 buildings that were just duplicated. And because I've been making adjustments and stuff, I've moved the locations of some of the exhibits so they've gone onto other parts of the building, and it's just turned 4 things that were exactly the same into completely different structures. And that was a new way of working for me, so it was really interesting, and I had a lot of fun discovering it and kind of working out how we can make these changes and adjustments. Obviously, when you zoom out and look at it, you can still see that the buildings are all the same shape in terms of their L-shaped footprint, but the roofs are now different, the layout of buildings is different, the way some of them stick out onto the street is different, and there's so many things that now set them apart. One of them has a habitat in it, so lots of different stuff happening, and I really liked doing this. This has been a really fun project and a really fun start of the series. So here I wanted to put something upstairs as if there were more antiques on the upper floor, and that was the whole reason why I made the roof here a little bit bigger and extended upwards to create a second, like a proper second floor, rather than that 2-meter second floor that we have on most of the other parts of these old town buildings. And we're coming near to the end of the video. I will just leave you with a tour so that you can enjoy what we've created so far, but we wanted to put a few more antiques and things in here, so it was all of the Indian fabrics and stuff. And the idea is, obviously this is where we have like little theme changes, because we've got a load of this is a quintessentially British Tudory town, and we have artifacts from all over the world in our antique shop, which just makes sense. And we're coming around to finish off now. I haven't done the doorway for the greengrocers yet, but that is coming up. And I did want to use some of the classical arches, but they didn't work. I have left it in the video so you can see our process in it and how I made my adjustments and changed my mind on things, because that does happen a lot. It's happened a lot during this. We're coming up, this is like a 27-minute video, but in reality it took me about 6 hours in total to get all of this done. So it's a lot of like process and a lot of making changes and things like that. But it's a process that I've loved doing, and I can't wait for more of this one. So as you can see here, we're just finishing off the little bits to the entrance of this greengrocer, putting a window in, and a little TV screen here where I'm going to make a new sign for the greengrocers. And that finishes us off. So I hope you enjoyed the little tour, and I hope you've enjoyed these little snippets of what's happening in Arcadia at the moment. Obviously there's been a lot of like repetitive building sort of stuff going on, but I think we're almost at the end of it. I'm really looking forward to doing the fine detailing work next week, as well as bringing in a brand new habitat, because it's been a good couple of episodes since we last did that. So I'm looking forward to doing that as well. And you'll have seen already right there in the last shot that we have our habitat ready. We just need to see what's going to fit in there. So I'll leave you with the rest of this, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.